Hey, it's Jay again. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do some architectural photography and I'll show you how I process one of the images in Photoshop. Well, I came into New York City today to a really new development on the west side of Manhattan called Waterline Squares. 3 new towers surrounding a park. Unfortunately, it's right by the West Side Highway, so there's a lot of noise. Hope you can hear me okay. But I came down to do some architectural photography, so it's just some great new structures that I can check out. I wandered around the area a bit and I think I found a pretty good composition for one of these towers. You could see it kind of behind me there. So I'm going to set up my tripod and try to get some shots here. Well, I'm using my wide-angle lens, my 16 to 35 millimeter lens to capture this whole building. And what I like about it is the combination of lines, curves, and different tonality to the building as well. I'm going to walk around this building a little bit just to see if I can get a different angle. As you move around the building, the appearance is really quite different, so I'll just check out different compositions. Well, I got some nice clouds up in the sky above the building, so I figure while I'm here with my tripod I might as well pop on my 10-stop neutral density filter and do some long exposure to try to capture some of those streaking clouds. Well, if you've been a viewer of this channel, you may have noticed in the past, 5 or 6 videos, I've been wearing a hat. And that's simply because my hair is incredibly long, having not cut it for probably about 5 months. And so if I took my hat off, I would look a little like this guy. And I don't need another nickname. Well, I got some good shots of this building. I'm going to walk around this area and see if I could get shots of some of these other buildings down here before I head home. Well, took some other shots. I think that first building was the best. If you're really into Photoshop, stick around. I'll show you how I processed one of these images in Photoshop. If you're not, probably sign off now, but make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. Okay, welcome to my computer. I had a great morning of shooting in the city, and now I am in Photoshop. Here's the image that I want to work with, and I want to turn this image into this image. I've done a little bit of work in Lightroom already, converted to black and white. I increased the clarity a tad, but really didn't do that much. And you can see it's a kind of a cool image, but it looks a little flat. But we can improve it in Photoshop. As I go through this, I'll go step by step, but just remember there's a lot of ways of doing the same thing in Photoshop. And so if you have a different way or a better way of doing this stuff, please let me know. Also, I've already made a number of selections, and I basically used the polygonal lasso tool. I zoomed in really tight, I outlined the different parts of the image I wanted to select, and then to save the selections, I went up to Select, either Save Selection down here. It's grayed out now because I don't have a selection selected. And you think of a name for it, so it's relatively straightforward. I will do a separate video on just doing the selections, but not right now. So let's start with the sky. So I'm going to go to Load Selection, and again, I've already made this selection, called it Sky. And with the sky, I want to darken it and add a lot of contrast. I want to really highlight the moving clouds. This was a long exposure, so I had some great streaking clouds in the sky. I'm going to go and use a curves adjustment layer, which I'll be using throughout this tutorial. And of course, to create contrast, you want to create a bit of an S-curve. So I'm going to pull down on the left, and you can see that darkens things quite a bit. And then I'm going to bring back some of these highlights, and so I'll pull up on the right, and you get this nice dramatic sky. Here's the before, fairly flat. There's the after. Let's work on different parts of the building now. So I'm going to start with this kind of curved feature on the right side. I called it right panel. And what I want to do is emphasize the curvature of this building even more. And so I'm going to start with a curves adjustment layer. First thing I'm going to do is brighten the entire selection. And so as I pull up on the line, you can see this selection becomes quite a bit brighter. I then want to reselect, and I'm going to use a gradient tool. Again, I'll be using a gradient tool throughout this demonstration. I'm going to choose a gradient tool. I'm going to use the reflected gradient tool, which is right here. I want my foreground color to be white because I want this layer to kind of show through. And so if I pull out from the middle, you kind of get a brighter center part of this image. If here's the before, here's the after. In fact, what I want to do is emphasize this even more. And so if I'm already selected, so I can go up to a curves adjustment layer, this time pull down on the layer. That's going to darken the entire selection. But I want that under layer to show through, that brightness. And so if I make my foreground color black, I need to reselect it. Got my gradient tool. Again, pull out from the middle. The layer right beneath this will show up, and that's the brightness. Sometimes you have to play with it a bit just to get it straight. I can deselect, by the way, by hitting Command D on a Mac. It's a great shortcut. So here's the before, kind of flat, and here's the after, which again highlights that curvature pretty well. Let's move over to the left side of the building. I'm going to use, I call it left panel. What I want to do here is create more contrast. I want those windows to really pop and the rest of that building to be a bit darker. That's a pretty easy thing to do. You use a curves adjustment layer, pull down on the left to darken the entire selection, and then to bring back those highlights and to make them pop, pull up on the right, and so you get this really nice contrast. Here's the before, there's the after. Let's work on the middle part of the building. I think I called it middle. There it is. I want this middle section to be brighter, especially towards the top part of it. And so I can use a curves adjustment layer, pull up on the curve to brighten the entire selection. I want to reselect it, go to my gradient tool. This time I'm going to choose the linear gradient tool. And I'm going to make sure my foreground color is white because I want this layer to be visible. And I'm going to pull down from the top, and that kind of does it, right? You can see here's the before, here's the after. It brightens up the top part of this image with a gradient as it goes down. Let me deselect. Let me do one other part of the building. different features, sometimes I just want them to pop a little bit more. And so there's this one little strip on the lower part of the image that I'm going to make that selection. I'm going to choose a curves adjustment layer, pull it up, and you can see it's popping a little bit. I guess we can also brighten up the pole a little bit as well. So if I hit load selection, I'll choose pole, use a curves adjustment layer, pull up on the pole. Again, just different parts of the building become more prominent when you brighten them up. But that's basically kind of where I left it at that point. And so here's the before, and then the after. I'll show you the final image. Look like that. Hey, if you do have any comments or questions, just leave a comment down below. And if you do like these videos, you want to see more of them, please definitely subscribe so you don't miss future videos. And until next time.